So one more thing about the interview. How do you talk about money in the interview? At some point, you have to say, what are you making? What do you know, I've got a range here. It's 70 to 90. How do I decide what that offer is eventually going to be?
I'm not sure that I'd like to hear what you think about this a little bit. I would say that my perspective is that as the hiring manager, the owner, whoever it is, I need to know what it is that my offer is. I'm not actually looking necessarily to explore a whole lot, because what I'm going to offer is what I can offer, what I'm going to feel comfortable offering, right? So one of the most important parts to me is that I feel like I'm getting the right person at the right price. So that comes from me, that comes from my organization, and I'm going to put it out there. Watching that reaction on the candidate's face, you know, if there's a lot of disappointment from that, then you may want to go up from there. You might have started with a little bit of a low ball, and you might have some room to go, and you can try that out on them, but that's establishing a relationship between them. You really see that sort of crestfallen look at that salary range, then you need to revisit whether you have the right talent at the right price. So I get very concerned. That's my own perspective. I want to let people know what it's going to be and hear and see what they have to say about that, as opposed to sort of softly peddling, oh, well, I think I'm going to be around here, because then I don't look like I know what I want.
I agree with you. We need to have an offer, but I also want to make sure, and again, this is something that sometimes hiring managers and business owners have trouble with, I want you to ask in each of the positions on their resume, starting at the bottom, so what did you make at that job? And then the next job, what did you make at that job? Just so we establish a salary history or a pattern. And one of the nice things about doing it that way is people know not to answer the question, well, what are you looking for in this position in terms of price? But if you say, so right out of school, you were a junior technician, what did you make at that job? Usually they'll answer that, right?
Right,
okay,
that's a good point.
The next one, okay, I answered that. Now by the time I get to your last job, well, you've answered all the way around long. What are you going to hold on to me now? And so it's a way to get that salary history out on the table. And then, like you say, if you're interviewing a range of candidates, some that have less experience and some that have more experience, I want to be able to evaluate what that extra $5,000 in salary is really buying me. And so if I see a candidate that I really like, I really need to be specific about knowing how much more am I going, how much do I have to stretch to get that candidate that maybe has that additional experience. So
yeah, that's a great point.
I don't want anyone to fail to ask. If someone comes back from a first interview and I say, well, what were they making their last job? And they say, I don't know. Then I say, well, then you have to call them up and answer that question because we can't do anything without that piece of information. So yeah. I just don't want people to not ask that question or feel uncomfortable asking it. And the way to get over it is to ask it 5 times. You know, don't just wait till the end and say, oh, by the way, how much were you making? But if we start right at the beginning and ask all the way along, then we're more likely to get better information.
Right. So you're going to make me say that in 1987 I made $11,000 working full-time for a publisher in Chicago?
Did you, Chuck? What was minimum wage in 1987?
It must have been right about there.
$5.50.
Yeah,